Hey, what's going on YouTube? Today I'm going to be going over my Cast on Critical Ice Spear build for 3.22 Trial of the Ancestors. A lot has changed since the build from 3.21 as we lose Crucible items, which is giving us a lot of power. Of course, every build is going to feel a little bit worse with the Crucible item trees being nuked out of the game. But tattoos definitely did play a part in this build, so that being said, let's get into it. For the tree, we have for jewels, we have a Thread of Hope with Corrupted Blood Immunity. It's a large ring that allows us to get Light of Divinity, Glancing Blows, and Sovereignty without having to attach any other skill points to the small nodes. Next, we have a large Cluster Jewel, Blanketed Snow, Prismatic Heart, Widespread Destruction, with 2 attached medium Cluster Jewels, Eye-to-Eye Repeaters, and then 2 attached small Cluster Jewels, that being Energy Shield, Resistances, 35% increased effect, and some Dex on a Reservation Jewel. And then the other one is more Resistances, Energy Shield, increased effect on another Reservation Jewel. We then have a Militant Faith Timeless Jewel, allowing us to get Inner Conviction from the Dominus effect, as well as having extra elemental damage and non-curse aura effect. It plays a pinnacle part in any cast on crit build, so it's pretty much necessary to get. We then have another large Cluster Jewel setup with Blanketed Snow, Widespread Destruction, and Prismatic Heart. Attached to that, we have 2 mediums, Eye-to-Eye Shrieking Bolt and Eye-to-Eye Shrieking Bolt for the mediums. And then we have a 3rd Reservation small Cluster Jewel with increased effect, more resistances, and energy shield. We then, in our other medium Cluster Jewel, have a Melding of the Flesh max rolled so that we can prevent as much resistance loss as possible, sitting in that last medium there. Moving down to the right side of the tree, we have our Watcher's Eye, which is a % crit chance while affected by hatred, and energy shield on hit discipline Watcher's Eye. Those are the 2 important mods. Past that, you can get any other 3rd good mod, or you can just settle for the 2 mods. It doesn't really matter. I have physical damage reduction while affected by a determination as my 3rd mod. This could be a 2nd hatred mod. This could be, if you're running clarity in your build, you could do a clarity mod. If you're running precision, you could do a precision mod. Whatever you feel works in the spot, you can kind of fill. But for me, it was easiest to do it with PDR on determination. We then move towards the bottom right side of the tree, and we get our last large Cluster Jewel, which is another Blanketed Snow, Prismatic Heart, Widespread Destruction Jewel. And then attached to that is 2 triple crit increased max energy shield Cobalt Jewels. Now, there are budget Cobalt Jewels that you can use where you replace one of the crit mods for global crit. It has a lower roll on crit, but at least you don't have to pay as much. For the Spell Cold Elemental plus Energy Shield Cobalt Jewels, they're typically within the 35 to 40 Divine range early league, and then they go up to around 75 Divines towards the end of the league. A global crit multi replacing one of those 3 mods makes the price more like 20 Divines, so it's definitely something you could consider. For the Ascendancy, we have Unholy Authority with Void Beacon, Frigid Wake, and Forbidden Power. It's the classic cast on crit Ice Spear Occultist Ascendancy tree. And then for the tattoos, which is the cool part, we're pathing down to this large int node down in the bottom right. And attached to that int node is a dex node, and then 3 dex nodes plus a chance to avoid being stunned and bow damage to complete a 7 node cluster there. That is allowing us to get Skills Fire and additional projectile, which is a ton of extra damage. And then the branching 3 dexterity nodes are becoming max cold resistance nodes, allowing us to get up to 85% cold res. The big intelligence node is then turning into an extra power charge, so +1 to max power charge. Very useful. For the other tattoos that we have, we're adding to any other dexterity node that's not alone by itself, we're adding 3 to 5 flat cold. For our int nodes, we're adding increased global defenses wherever we can. And then we have increased reservation efficiency to meet our minimum mana requirements. And that's about it. And then for our strength nodes, same thing. We're adding reservation efficiency or global defense. So we're taking full advantage of that bottom right side, being so close to that other large cluster jewel, allowing us to get a ton of extra damage down there. So yeah, very worth doing. It's insane. This build is currently clocking at 133 million hit DPS in first form all projectiles. It's got a 98% crit chance in first form, with a 10.10 trigger rate, so it's a perfect trigger rate. It has 6.2k energy shield, which can be bumped up if you work on your reservation efficiency, like for instance running an Awaken Enlighten 5 in one of your skill gems. You can get it up to a 6.4k energy shield, which is what I have it at now. The effective hit pool is around 600,000. Eventually that number stops losing meaning. Basically, you have a ton of physical damage reduction, fire max cold, and lightning max hit is just off the charts. So yeah, this build does feel quite invincible unless you take multiple critical attacks in a row. That's when you can start to feel the damage kind of come in. For our skills, in our first shield, we're running Molten Shell with Awaken Unbound Elements and Frostblink. This allows us to apply extra chill effect when we Frostblink onto enemies, and then we have a cast on Walk Molten Shell. For our 7 link, because we're running Ulnatol's Vow, we have Ice Spear, Inspiration, Awaken and Power, Greater Multiple Projectiles, Cast on Crit, Cyclone, and Power Charge on Critical. The Ice Spear and Inspiration are anomalous. Inspiration is anomalous because the mana cost is already 0, so we don't have to work further on the mana cost, but we do want extra crit chance, so we have it being anomalous. Anomalous Ice Spear is for the extra piercing, very useful for clearing. We then have Divergent Cyclone so that we can move faster, and Divergent Power Charge on critical so that we get extra damage per power charge. So very effective. In the helmet, we're running Herald of Ice, Purity of Ice, Tempest Shield, and Enlighten 4. This could be bumped up to an Enlighten 5 for extra global defenses on the tattoos on the tree, of course. This is just kind of our defense and damage, and our AoE clear. Herald of Ice feels extremely important for clearing. Otherwise, you will notice it is very hard to take out full packs very cleanly. Tempest Shield gives us a ton of spell block chance, so basically necessary to run. It also gives us shock immunity. Purity of Ice is giving us that all res increase, giving us up to that 85% all res. For our weapon in our dagger, we have Sniper's Mark, Mark on Hit, and Inspiration. We're running Inspiration, just a default version here, with Divergent Mark on Hit and 2120 Sniper's Mark. The Inspiration in here is particularly to drop the cost of the spell. Since we're so tight on mana, we actually can't afford to pay for Sniper's Mark without Inspiration, or extra reduced mana cost somewhere else in the tree. In the gloves, we're running Determination, Awaken Enlighten 5, Hatred, and Foul Discipline. The Discipline is anomalous since we are typically on full energy shield. We can take advantage of that anomalous extra damage boost, but you can just run a default, it's fine. And then we're running default Hatred Determination. Since our evasion rating is literally 42, the anomalous version of Determination, the Divergent version of Determination doesn't actually do anything for us really, so we're not spending a ton of money to get like 3 extra armor. The Enlighten can be Enlighten 4, you just have to sacrifice more global defenses in the tree for more reservation efficiency in the tree on tattoos. So that is based on preference and based on budget. In the boots, we're running our Curse setup. We're running Vortex with Frostbite, Awakened Hex Touch, and Bone Chill. This is giving us a ton of extra chill effect, as well as non-damaging ailment effect and ailment effect. And then Frostbite is giving us extra cold penetration, and we're getting that by casting Vortex wherever we go. So we have Cast on Walk on the Molten Shell, and then we're typically just holding down like the W key on Vortex and just casting it constantly since the mana cost is 0. So the setup would be like you hold right click and move around with right click, and then you're holding left click for the Molten Shell, and then you're holding W for the Vortex, and you just kind of move around holding those buttons down. And then, of course, we're reserving for Aspect of the Spider through the gear. Which, for the gear, to start, we're running a Imperial Skein Bait Spiker Dagger. This I made myself. You can mirror it. The mirror fee is 40 divines. You can just reach out to me at Bike Spokes on Path of Exile or at Cold Spokes on Path of Exile. You can also reach me at my Discord. If you join the Discord in the description, you can ask me about the dagger. This is currently the best cast on crit Ice Spear dagger on the market. Definitely worth getting your hands on if you can afford to pay for it and you want to min-max your Ice Spear build. We're then running a perfectly rolled Aegis Aurora. Arguably, a max block chance is more defensive Aegis Aurora, but the more energy shield, the better for your crit multi, because we have the crit multi based on energy shield on your shield mastery on the passive tree. So we want to have a high as rolled Aegis Aurora as possible. For our helmet, we're running a Awakened Slammed max power. Nearby enemies have minus 12% to cold resistance helmet. I'm running a Hubris Circlet instead of a Blizzard Crown just for the extra energy shield. When I Awaken Slammed mine, I got tier 1 intel. There is a way that you can set up so that you can continuously Awaken Slam on a elevated Redeemer mod helmet. So basically what you would do is you would get the 2 Redeemer mods, one of them being the nearby enemies have minus 12% cold resistance on your helmet. You would then elevate it and then try to null down till you only have 1 prefix, 1 suffix. You then suffix lock and scour, and when you do that, you will turn the item magic. Now you can imprint it, and you can slam as many times as you want, max power charge until you get a good roll. So I got tier 1 intel, and then I exiled slammed tier 1 energy shield, and the stun and block recovery was there when I slammed it, and then we crafted on energy shield, and then of course Ice Spear fires an additional projectile as the enchantment. Very powerful helmet. For the body armor, until a Skin of the Loyals comes out, that's double corrupted and works for us to get us 13 million extra damage. We're running a Skin of the Lords simple robe with Unwavering Stance. This is giving us stun immunity so that we can run more movement speed in our flasks. Of course, if you don't have Unwavering Stance on your Skin of the Lords and instead you're running like a Skin of the Loyal, you can swap out the movement speed suffix on your flasks for stun immunity or stun evasion. For the gloves, it's a glove craft with double tier 1 energy shield, so you Essence of Woe spam on the gloves until you get tier 1 energy shield. You then Eldritch craft for dexterity of as much as you need to meet requirements, and then you Ashling with a 50-50 of it removing your dexterity if you do prefix lock, and then if it doesn't remove dexterity, you have a 50-50 of it giving you a suffix so that you can get increased elemental damage if you dealt a crit strike recently. If you get prefix, you can go +2 AoE and then craft on LA damage. I got LA damage and then crafted on increased damage during any flask effect. I personally think this is better than +2 AoE, but that's up to you to decide. For the boots, we're running a cooldown recovery tailwind boots with onslaught on kill, which doesn't matter because we have a silver flask, and then we have any number of energy shield with aspect of the spider. These boots are quite easy to craft. You just awaken slam until you get an energy shield roll that you like with an open suffix, and then you just go and beast craft on aspect of the spider skill, and then you bench craft. Very simple to make. For our amulet, we're running Ulnatol's Vow with allocates charisma. We're primarily focusing on having this have a lot of fire and lightning resistance because that is our weak spot. The chaos resistance doesn't matter because we're chaos immune. Cold resistance doesn't matter because we are so heavily inflated on cold resistance due to purity of ice. For our rings, we're running a Calandra Touch plus the Plague Grip Diamond Ring, which is found on TFT. It's the best cast on critical power charge stacker ring that I've seen in a long time. They hit tier 1 crit multi with max power and spell damage per power charge, so this is best in slot. You can get it, like, I'm telling you, like, even on standard, a lot of people would say this is like close to best in slot unless you're doing recombinators. Yeah, very good ring. Definitely get your hands on it. And then for our belt, we're running a Mage Blood with a high Dex roll. It's important that we get a high Dex roll because our Dex requirements are so tasking. We need a high amount of Dex so that we can work with the tattoos on the tree. So definitely try to get a high Dex roll on your Mage Blood. For our flask, we're running a Quicksilver Flask, Diamond Flask, Granite Flask, and Silver Flask with increased armor effect, increased movement speed, additional elemental resistances, and reduced mana cost of skills, all with 70% effect and 25% increased effect prefix. Do note that the Silver Flask has 64% increased effect instead of 70, so that we don't bypass our trigger rate. This allows us to get a perfect trigger rate. If we go higher than 64%, our damage starts going backwards, so we keep it at 64% on purpose. And then we have Dying Sun with as little less duration as you can get. So you want to have 40% less duration so that it's up as long as possible. The other two stats don't really matter that much. Increased area of effect is useful, but you can live without it. Mainly you want to have this have as long a duration as possible. And that kind of wraps up the build, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little showcase of mine, and hopefully this gave you some ideas on how to do cast on critical ice spear in 3.22. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, take care.